Welcome to the next episode of L'Exclusive, the podcast produced and hosted by PaperStreet Web Design and Marketing. As always, I'm your host, Nancy, and today I'm joined by David, our SEO manager, and Drew, our Google Ads and pay-per-click manager. Hi, David and Drew. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
In our discussion today, we're going to be talking about something that frequently comes up when I'm talking to our clients during our marketing evaluations. We'll talk about, okay, I want to bring more clients into my firm or my business. Do I do Google Ads, which is also known as pay-per-click? Again, most of the time, pay-per-click will be Google, but it can be Bing or other things, but we'll refer to it a lot as Google Ads. So pay-per-click or search engine optimization, SEO. Now, we've done other podcasts talking about what SEO is and what that entails, and then what Google Ads entail and things like that. But sometimes our clients just really need to know what is the difference between pay-per-click and pay-per-click and SEO, which is better for them. Should they do one? Should they do the other? Or should they do both? So in this podcast episode, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each and try to give you some good framework for deciding if you should be doing a Google Ads campaign, an SEO campaign, and or both. Now, again, we are largely a law firm marketing company. That being said, a lot of what we're saying applies to all businesses and professionals. So hopefully a lot of you find this conversation interesting. All right, well, diving right into the thing I think that most of the clients will ask about the most is the time frame question. And the easiest and quickest answer is the one I give, which is that pay-per-click can bring in clients faster than SEO can. But let's briefly dig into that and explain why. Drew, can you kick us off?
So the analogy that one of our colleagues likes to use every time we discuss this with clients is the oven versus the microwave, where the SEO is the oven, so it takes a little bit longer to bake, whereas pay-per-click is the microwave, where you put it in, you put in your settings, and it's ready to go pretty quickly. So I mean that's just kind of like one of the big advantages of like using PPC is that it's usually pretty short time to set up. As long as there's a website, like that's pretty much the only requirement. Or even if you're doing local service ads, doesn't even need a website. So typically like a couple days to set up is all you need. And you can also pivot a lot quicker too in terms of if you need to change gears and whatnot.
By the same token, your budget can get used up pretty quickly too. So pretty much everything with Google Ads is pretty fast, huh, Drew?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, David, walk us through the SEO timeframe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess circling back to the oven versus microwave analogy, yeah, SEO, it takes time, like an oven, to preheat, to cook. It takes time for a campaign to grow. Usually, you have to have a lot of the planning stages in place, all of your content ready to go. So you're looking at usually like a 3 to 6 month time period to see significant growth because, unlike a pay-per-click campaign, we can't really just, jump to the front of the line from just an ad perspective. So really it's, for lack of a better word, organically growing your website, your power and authority to reach the, hopefully the top of Google ranking. So it's not something that tends to happen that quickly. And yeah, it takes time to kind of establish your, presence and authority for any kind of practice area or market that you're looking to target. With that being said, there are certain objectives that will be, quicker to summit than others. Another analogy we like to use is kind of each keyword or each objective being a mountain range, some being smaller, some being larger. So usually the more competitive keywords are going to take longer to summit. There's, a lot more competition, more people kind of, fighting for that space, whereas more niche areas are going to have less competition and you'll probably see results faster. So, I guess for a concrete example, car accident being a significant mountain to climb, versus maybe something like a subset of estate planning, a certain type of trust, or, a certain subset of personal injury is going to be a little bit easier to rank quicker for.
And also to just chime in with that as well, with SEO, it also depends on the foundation that you have. David mentioned it, which is true, is what are we starting out with for your website? Because a lot of times clients will come to us, and David, I'm sure can elaborate, but they'll come to us with like no content on the website at all, or they won't have practice area content that talks about it. So in those cases, we do see websites jump thousands of spots by adding that content. But like I said, what we always do is again, David's and mountain range analogy is perfect. Again, that may be easier in smaller markets and smaller competitive phrases, but so the time frame will be different for other clients, especially with depending on what you're starting with. Google Ads, if I'm not mistaken, Drew, is a little bit more consistent simply because it's depending fully on the ad versus the starting point of what you're working with your website. Correct, both of you?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the starting point of your website as well is going to kind of also, yeah, determine sort of how long it takes for SEO as well. You have a brand new, let's say you're starting a new firm, a brand new website that's never been established, never been indexed. I mean, you're really starting from absolute, scratch versus maybe a website that's been around for 10 years, maybe hasn't invested in SEO, but, they're already been kind of doing the foundational parts of SEO, like monthly blogging, having, good established content, maybe getting press mention. So they're kind of like naturally almost building up their SEO. So when, that type of website chooses to, engage in a campaign, they'll probably see results a lot faster than, the website, the law firm who's just starting out from scratch too. So that's a factor, as well. But for
Exactly. And
for
that is
PPC,
something
it
that I
doesn't.
will talk a lot about.
And for
Yeah.
PPC, it doesn't matter at all if you're a brand new website or, a firm that's been around for 20 years. So that's the kind of advantage of that is, that's
Yeah, the only thing it might dictate is like strategy. Like if you're a new firm or new website, new business, like you might want to do like a display or a performance max campaign just to get as much traffic as possible versus, doing like a regular search campaign or doing both. Um, and probably you would want to have like an established website to do like a remarketing campaign or something like that. But typically, yeah, it doesn't really matter that much. You can do something with PPC regardless of what, phase you're at in your business or your website's life cycle.
All right, moving on to the next one. Okay, we know you need clients right away, or you can wait a few months. The next most important question is how much are you willing to spend? And like I said, both SEO and Google Ads do require a fairly substantial budget in order to stay competitive. But let's break it down and understand what factors into your budget, what are we looking to estimate, and how can clients determine that? Drew, you want to kick us off again?
Yeah, so in terms of budgets, I mean the first thing is that, I mean Google has tools where you can um, you know estimate how much budget you need. They usually oversell it, sometimes they undersell it. That's why, having somebody who with expertise that actually knows like how to manipulate those systems is helpful. Uh, but yeah, the PPC costs are ongoing, so you need to make sure that you have enough budget so that you don't run out like on a daily basis. A really important metric with Google Ads is search impression share, which is basically like their version of market share for the search engine results pages. Um, and so the market saturation at that level is anywhere between above like 80 to 90% of that impression market share. So you always want to try and have your budget be somewhere at least like in where you're competitive. And they have reports inside of Google in the audit section where you can see where you stack up against competitors. And the thing that we always try to balance is, where we're showing on the page versus how often we're showing. Um, because you could be showing at the top once or twice and then your ad goes away as soon as you get a click. So it's really important to have the correct budget in place for to make sure that your ads show for long enough for it to be valuable. So you're not just getting one click and it's going away.
And like I said, it's different pricing as well because with SEO, your budget's going to be more consistent than it may be for Google Ads. Google Ads may have a little bit more volatility. But David, can you explain what goes into factoring with the budgeting for SEO?
Yeah, I mean, SEO is going to have a little bit more upfront costs because of all the kind of labor and strategy involved with getting an SEO campaign off the ground. And then, of course, we're going to need continual. I mean, it's continual monthly cost to kind of keep up the strategic work, which would include anything from continual content creation, technical site updates, the link building, continual audits of how things are going, analytics analysis, and conversion reporting. So really, there is it's not really based upon the pay-per-click model. It's really seeing what budget is needed to compete in the area that you're looking to market towards, and having that monthly budget to continue to put in the work that's needed to do well in an organic SEO campaign by continually proving to Google your relevance on the subject matter and your kind of authority in that space as well. So and I guess and I guess something to mention too is that also can generate a better return on investment over time. We'll kind of talk a little bit further about this later, but really once pay-per-click is you pull that budget, your ad completely disappears, where SEO kind of has that residual kind of long-term effect even after you may technically like stop or pause a campaign.
We love analogies here at PaperStreet, and I think one of the best ones that we say pretty much all the time, I know a lot of us will do, is that pay-per-click is more like a sprint, while SEO is a marathon. So if you're thinking about your budgeting for what you need clients, like let's say your time frame is you need these clients. SEO will take a longer time to maintain, to grow, and things like that. And it continues. You have to, as David said, continue to show your authority and your relevance. Pay-per-click, you could say, hey, I've got $5,000. I want to spend it on my ads. Let's budget it out, see how long it takes us. And that's the end of it, because maybe you get 7 really great pay-per-click clients, and that's enough to carry you through the year or the next 6 months and things like that. So there is that differential in planning your budget when it comes to SEO and pay-per-click and choosing which one is best for you. SEO is a commitment. Here at PaperStreet, we do require a multi-month contract for SEO, simply because it does take time, and your ranking, it takes time to get those rankings, and then your rankings can drop when you start taking those funds away. So you can't get that immediacy. So we have longer contracts. By the flip side, with pay-per-click, we give you a 30-day contract. See what you like after that month. Change your budget the next month. Take it from there. It's, again, you have that flexibility, but it depends on what your goals are and things like that, which we'll tackle next. All right, so we talked about your time frame and your budget. So now a client tells me, all right, now what do I do? My next question for them is going to be, well, let's talk about your location. Not just what you're looking to target, but where are you located physically? Now, the benefits for that are Google Ads, doesn't matter. SEO, it very much matters. Drew, kick us off with this, please.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter. Just it's a lot more flexible in terms of what you can do with like the PPC, like geography targeting, because you can go down to a mile radius around, you know, a latitude and longitude to the entire world, and still get something out of it. The benefit is that the more targeted you are, the better it is. Like if you only want like a 5 mile radius around your office location, that's fine. You can do that with PPC, whereas like SEO, it's more tied to like the actual physical location of the user or like the terms they use in the keywords. So yeah, there's just a lot more flexibility on like the PPC side. And it's great if you have like multiple locations. Like we have a couple of clients and they just have like a radius around all of their different offices, and their offices are spread out like across a large area too. But yeah, so it's definitely got like good flexibility, like a lot more customization in terms of like where you can target and how you can target in terms of location and geography.
It's great for virtual offices as well. And David, we can dig into that a little bit, because again, there is a big issue because a lot of this world has become virtual, and that's great. And a lot of law firms can do their business virtually. However, that doesn't mean your marketing will always match where you're located in terms of if you have a virtual office. David, could you talk about location and SEO a bit more, please?
Google does see Google's like search in general tries, if it senses the searcher is looking for something like a service that could be local to them, they're going to present local results first and foremost. So Google does see law firms, for example. Most law firms are, yeah, a local kind of entity. So you basically have a validity to rank where your physical office location is, because Google is going to want to present, yeah, the local law firms where that searcher is located first and and foremost. So really it limits your reach to a certain degree, because if you're not located in that city where the searcher is located, then Google kind of leaves you out of the picture. So really, where you have that physical office location is going to kind of give you upside in that area where you're able to rank. And a lot of the SEO work that's kind of done behind the scenes is setting up your business on various legal or other directories where that address is then continue to be established and related to the website. So unfortunately, SEO does, you're limited a little bit more by where you are physically located. Not to say that you can't launch a national campaign or a statewide campaign, but really it's just, yeah, the organic kind of landscape, it just makes it more difficult for firms not located in a physical location to rank there. You can try and set up sometimes some city pages, we call them, to kind of help target areas maybe where you're not physically located, to kind of have that relevancy from a content perspective. But yeah, I mean, ultimately for most results, Google is going to favor yeah, the law firms with physical offices and in that city.
It's also worth mentioning the common sense approach for geography for both Google Ads and SEO. A lot of times clients want to bite off more than they can chew, and they're like, oh, yeah, I think people will drive 45 minutes to go see me as a lawyer and things like that. It's totally worth it for me to target this city 45 minutes away. Okay, I can't do SEO for it. Sure, I'll do pay-per-click and things like that. But you have to have a common sense factor to your decision-making process there. So, for example, if somebody was in a major truck accident, maybe we're talking $8 million worth of claims. Yeah, they may be worth driving 45 minutes away. Or maybe if they're in a high contested divorce, they need help big time, maybe they'll drive. But if you're a Wilson Estates lawyer, is someone really going to drive 45 minutes to you? If you're a business lawyer and you're just doing contracts, is somebody going to drive that far for you? A lot of times, like I said, yes, you may be located in a suburban or rural area, but trying to target clients that may not necessarily want to drive to you or may want the comfort of seeing you in your office versus virtual will also play into that as well. So even though you have the ability with pay-per-click to target these far off cities, it may not always be beneficial for you to do so from a common sense perspective. So even though you may get the numbers, you may get the data for a Google ad campaign or even an SEO one for a further reach, just take a minute and really consider if someone would be willing to drive a substantial difference to get to you, when if they have other competitors a lot closer to them, that may be the factor in itself. So that's just always mentioning as like kind of a common sense check before we start moving through with initiating a campaign. But okay, let's say we've got your time frame, your budget. We now know where we're targeting. What are we targeting specifically? Your keywords. And keyword targeting has a lot of similarities for both pay-per-click and SEO, but then there are also some very key differences. Drew, would you like to kick us off again?
Yeah, I think yeah, there's definitely a lot of overlap between like the type of keywords that are used for both. I think the main difference on the Google Ads and PPC side is that we always want to choose more keywords that are more actionable. We don't want people making informational intent searches necessarily finding the ads. We want them to do something because you're paying for this click. So the goal of that is definitely like the goal of both is to get people to reach out, but the goal of paid is definitely like to get them to reach out on a higher rate, like make it like a higher conversion rate once they get to the website, because you have those actionable terms. And you can do that in multiple ways. Like you can do it with the actual phrasing of the keyword, type of like match type you have, or with Google Ads you have broad and phrase and exact. Broad being the most open and exact being the most specific. Typically at PaperStreet, we only use phrase and exact because we want to get the closer matching searches to like what we want in terms of like actionable items. And then we can also include one thing you definitely can't do for SEO is we can include negative keywords, which are words that we add and we say if they also have this word in their search, we don't want to show our ads for it. We don't want to show up at all for that. So it kind of builds up on the relevance for what they're getting and just making sure that we've qualified these clicks before they get to the website. Because as I said, like you're paying for each one. And depending on like what type of business you are, like if you're a personal injury attorney, that click could cost you $100. So we really have to be like focused in and targeted on that side.
So in other words, we're looking for clients with more of a sense of urgency, so they're further along down in the thought process and the research stage of the game. SEO, however, while those more urgent phrases tend to be our primary keywords, a lot of times SEO campaigns can be very successful by varying where they appear for long-term phrases, long tail phrases, FAQs, and things like that. So, David, can you dive us through that a little bit, please?
And I mean, the primary focus of the campaign is still going to be on those keywords that are like with commercial intent or, convert intent to convert and not really just doing, preliminary searches. But SEO, as Nancy alluded to, an SEO campaign can help you rank for both. And when I say, I guess the commercial intent keywords to be, for example, I'm looking for a Florida car accident attorney or a Florida car accident lawyer. It's explicit that you're looking for, a specific legal area, and then you're also looking for an attorney or a lawyer. And when Google sees that type of search, they obviously understand the intent is to show law firms versus just maybe general general informative websites. So that's going to be the main focus of course, any SEO campaign as far as keywords are, concerned. But then we also, as Nancy alluded to, like an SEO campaign can also, through blogging and through FAQ-based content within your practice areas, can also make your website relevant for those longer tail keyword searches. Like, what should I do after I, was in a car accident? Or, what do I do if, somebody is, disputing a will? Questions like that also allow opportunities for law firms to be found where the customer is a little bit I guess earlier on in their journey, just trying to figure out if they even have a legal kind of case to pursue or really what their next steps are. So an SEO campaign can kind of attract visits from both standpoints, some of that preliminary searches, and then when the visitor is ready to start exploring law firms to hire and comparing those, they're going to kind of go with more of that generalized attorney or lawyer search. So those are the keywords that we tend to focus on for an SEO campaign.
It's interesting too with SEO. I mean, I used to be an SEO content manager, so I knew exactly what David's talking about here. When it comes to keywords, what's important to realize is your goals with your keywords and your content for SEO are going to matter. For example, you're going to have practice area content that's the main phrases, the big ones you need to cover. Like for family law, it's easy to explain. If you want clients who are looking for child custody, you're going to have a practice area page about child custody. If you want child support, people are disputing child support, those keywords are going to appear in your practice area content. You're going to have a designated page of content that's clearly visible as a main page of your site dedicated to that keyword. Different, however, is thinking about the related keywords that aren't those emergencies. So, for example, exactly what David was talking about with blogs. Your keywords that are maybe less urgent would also be what appears in a blog. So, for example, there's a thing where so people wonder if can I get custody based off emotional abuse. So the tagging or the keywording there is custody and emotional abuse, putting that into a blog so you can hit someone who's researching those matters. And then if your content is structured properly, you'll answer their question. You'll lead them to the page directed to the child custody keyword page. And that is how they'll see your journey. They'll stay on your site longer and be more interested in hiring you. So the journey becomes a little bit different, but the keywords are still very much there and targeting where clients are going on your site. So there requires a lot more strategy with those keywords and the presentation of the material for your SEO searches. Whereas Google, your ads are going, the ad itself is what depends on those keywords. And even though you should have a good landing page to support whatever your keyword is and have the keyword match whatever page you're directing the person to, there's less of a content strategy that's involved with Google as a pay-per-click than there is with SEO.
Oh, I just wanted to mention one more thing where, yeah, I mean, and it's interesting that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but, for SEO, we run, keyword research and work with our client to kind of select the keyword, phrases that we want. And then we go ahead and, do our best to target them. Whereas, in a pay-per-click campaign, you can just explicitly, list out all of the keywords you want to be, found for. Whereas, SEO campaign, it's like you can be targeting that, but doesn't necessarily mean you're going to, be able to rank.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty similar. I mean, we're kind of at the mercy of Google as to, if we have a list of like 300 keywords, we're kind of at their mercy as to which ones are going to be, showing the most often. But we can have a list of 300 keywords, and sometimes we do. But so yeah, we can do all kinds of variations, add all kinds of different like types. I mean, we go with what the client, what they want to focus on, but like we pretty much know what works. So we add in like all the phrasing that makes it more actionable, like making sure like versus, if you don't want, like we wouldn't have like, personal injury as a keyword. We would always have it with like attorney or lawyer or, with like the location on it, like something like things like that. So, but yeah, we can definitely, have like large keyword lists that we're
Yeah.
equally focusing on. Yeah.
Which is again kind of ties back into the time frame discussion and conversations like that, because you could target that wide frame range of keywords and things like that immediately with pay-per-click. So as Drew said, I mean, you don't want 300, but if you want to target like 50 keywords right away in your ads, it's a lot more doable than trying to do that with SEO, because with SEO, you have to bring up the trust and authority. You need the content for that. And then it's really difficult to off the bat rank for 50 different phrases. In fact, we don't even try to rank for 50 different phrases when we get started, because it's just an unrealistic expectation. So once again, it's a key difference between SEO and pay-per-click. All right, we've been sort of dancing around this in general and talking about who we're targeting with these, but there is a very, very definitive approach with when we're setting up our Google ad campaigns versus our SEO campaigns in terms of the audience and the specific goals you're looking to hit. So the process does differ when you're looking at through pay-per-click and SEO campaigns in terms of those goals and audiences. Drew, what do you look for when we're doing a goal and audience evaluation for your ads?
One of the first things we always ask our clients is like, who is your client? Like, what is your ideal client? Because there are audience targeting, there's demographic targeting, and there's various layers that we can put into the Google ads, where we can filter out what they don't want, and focus on what they do. For some attorneys, they want higher income clients. We can set the income level to only show to like people that Google knows are, top 10%, top 20% income levels for their areas. Um, Additionally, like they have other factors like, if we have a family attorney, we can target custody ads to people who are parents. Like and it'll only show the ads to people who are parents. I mean, that's really like I think the biggest selling point for PPC is like the level of targeting that you can do. I mean, we already mentioned like the location side of it. So I mean, you can get as targeted as you can get, the better it should be. Um, and then, it's good, like we've said a couple times already, it's good for new firms, anyone looking to get like clients quicker. I mean, usually like a PPC campaign, like it could take like up to 90 days to get up to full speed, but we've seen clients where they get results within days. So I mean, that's a huge differentiator also. And then like time sensitive campaigns, like anytime you have like an offer or event, you can switch out the ad copy. You can add, there's extensions you can add for different offers and things like that. Um, and then, yeah, so I mean, this it's just that the level of targeting, that's really where like the value is in the ads, is like how much you can hone in on your ideal client, or your ideal person that you want to get onto the website to do something. And that's, I think, the biggest advantage of PPC over SEO is that you have that level of extra layers that you can add in.
And like I said, not to belittle the targeting the audiencing of SEO, because sometimes that broader reach is a lot more applicable and a lot less risky financially. David, can you walk us through that a little bit more, please?
SEO is really doesn't allow for any of those customizations that Drew offered, where you're, only going to appear for certain, demographic or type of person. It's really it's for everyone. So a lot of firms really, take, I guess, two different approaches where, maybe more of the kind of the supermarket model where we're just trying to get our website shown in front of as many people as possible, get as many callers in, and then from there, hopefully, a large percentage is, a good, like an actual potential new client and not just, like a viable case, for the firm. Whereas others, take a more, even though we can't specify the type of audience we want to appear in front of, just take a more surgical approach where maybe only focus in on very niche areas so that they know that anytime they may get a conversion from that type of area, it is more than likely going to, be a viable case where when you go a little bit more broad, you don't really know what you're kind of getting. But so from that perspective, yeah, I mean, SEO is also really good for your overall just kind of brand awareness, authority, and building trust, and also like just reaching, those users sometimes earlier on in the hiring journey, like we, kind of mentioned, those people doing those preliminary searches. SEO is able to kind of capture those with blogging, where, pay-per-click is not really you wouldn't want to put ad dollars into just driving traffic for, informational purposes. But, when a SEO allows a visitor to kind of, come to your site and already kind of get the wheels turning, like, wow, this is a, great informative blog post kind of telling me what I need to do next. And of course, they can connect the dots that it is an actual law firm that they, will have in the back of their mind that they could potentially, hire when they're kind of ready to, move forward. Um, we kind of touched upon this earlier, as far as just like the audience is that your visibility does persist with SEO, even if after the publication has even occurred. So you put up a blog post, with, let's say you were advertising that with pay-per-click, you take down your budget, that blog post, kind of disappears immediately. But with SEO, that blog post is indexed, it's more evergreen content, and you're able to kind of get traffic, years down the line after that's even been published. So it definitely is just more visibility from an audience perspective and from like a long-term perspective as well.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that I myself see when I'm talking to our clients about this, like in deciding whether or not which option they should go with. And we'll get to one about option later after we finish this. But I think there's a higher gamble with Google ads, in the sense that even though you're very niche, you're very targeted, your income and things like that. If a person who's looking for an applicable search searches for something, they visited your site, unless you're doing remarketing or something like that, Drew, if I'm not mistaken, that person, if they Google the same phrase again, they may not see your ad again. So unless they contacted you from that click, then they may not contact you again from that same search. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they do put limitations on the number of times that a certain IP address can see the ads. They might see the ad again. They shouldn't get charged again for it if they do click on it, since they have come from that same IP address. But yeah, well, once they're gone for the ads, like it's usually like they're gonna move on to somebody else at that point, like, and click on the next ad and keep going. So I mean, that's always the benefit of having a really good like landing page or website, is you don't want them to leave. So that's always a big factor too with I think on both sides, is like making sure that you've got a good website so that like they'll stay on and know what to do, know what you want them to do.
Exactly. And so like kind of what excuse me, what David was saying, so if you're having that urgency and the person who's going to hire you, they see your ad, they click, they hire you, things like that. But if somebody's in more of a research stage of the game, like they were in a car accident, they don't know if they need a lawyer yet. They don't know if they're going to sue. Things like SEO are more beneficial because you'll repeatedly show up. If you rank number one, two, or three, if a person suggested distracted driving and you rank number one for that, you'll show up that Tuesday, that Wednesday, that Thursday, a week, 2 weeks later, the same way, and that person can continue to find you for that. And if they're searching for related terms to that, because it's connected to your SEO campaign. So, okay, so that's kind of an important thing because it's kind of a more of a one and done mentality with pay-per-click. You hope it doesn't come to that, but it's a little more nerve-wracking where SEO is more of the, oh, they'll see me in search again tomorrow, the next day, and things like that. So if that's the case, that's why we end this by saying you don't need to just pick one. Sometimes the best marketing approach is to have Google Ads and search engine optimization campaigns. Of course, the budget has to allow for that, but you will end up tenfold seeing better results for that. Drew, you want to tell us why from your perspective, and then we'll move on to David as well?
Yeah, and this is something that we talk about with clients a lot. Uh, the thing that we always tell them is that the more you show up on the search pages, the better. And so with ads and with local service ads, I mean, there's a potential to show 4 or more times on page one. You could show up in the local service ad, you can show up in the ad, you can show up in the map pack, you can show up in the organic results, and even there's also a possibility you could show up in the ad again at the bottom. So I mean that you could show up anywhere from like 2 to 5 times on one search, and like that creates perception of authority with people. If they keep seeing your name on there, like that registers with people, like it does. And the other thing on like having them both, you can have like the timing of it. You can use the PPC to supplement the SEO while the SEO is building up. So you can get traffic in. We've done this recently where we had some pages that weren't getting enough traffic. So we set up PPC campaigns for them because the client was doing both just to inundate them with traffic and get their rankings up. And it started to work pretty like immediately in terms of like the two things helping each other.
I mean, yeah, I feel like, I mean, SEO, I mean, I guess selfishly, I feel like SEO is definitely something that every firm would want to focus on, but then a matter of adding in, PPC for that, just additional like visibility. I mean, the best, like we've kind of been alluding to, I mean, if budget permits, the best scenario is to really use both. PPC can get you sort of those fast wins, get seen in highly saturated markets. Also, for campaign testing. So how kind of getting insight into how well certain keywords convert, and then really focusing in those from an SEO perspective as well. So PPC almost like allows for kind of like trial runs, seeing how those clicks perform, while an SEO campaign is building up to first page rankings. So, if we're driving clicks through a landing page for PPC, but it's not converting well, you probably want to make some changes because, if we get that page ranked from an SEO perspective, well, that traffic might follow, a similar path of not converting. So it almost kind of gives us some, insight into, what to expect on that.
PPC can essentially be the canary in the coal mine for the SEO team. Like if we're doing them both at the same time, it's like, hey, this isn't working. Like we need to get this fixed before the
Yep.
SEO is like going or ramped up. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, ultimately they're great to have together just for that, yeah, that full-fledged visibility and for just everything we've kind of mentioned. Maybe there's a more difficult practice area that's taking longer to target, inject that PPC campaign to go ahead and get that, top page visibility while the SEO campaign is building up because like we've kind of alluded to before, SEO just it's that long-term effect. I mean, hopefully you're going to want to continue to, put forth monthly efforts into it, but really once you kind of are king of the hill, you'll maintain that for, a little while. I mean, SEO is ultimately an arms race, so there are always competitors kind of nipping at your heels trying to get to the top. So, it's not something you can kind of just, set it and forget it once you get to the top. But really, it's harder to kind of overthrow a website that's been, producing quality content for, over a decade. And, so.
Yeah, and I think that one of the best instances of when you should have PPC and SEO together as well is sometimes I'll talk to firms that have higher priorities for one location versus another. So, for example, if like you have three offices and one of them is your main producer, so you want to target that one, but you also need the rankings to go up for the smaller firms, it may be more cost effective to do just SEO for the smaller offices, not invest as much into ads and then put heavier ads into the more competitive office locations. So that way, all three office locations would benefit. Or the same thing is true with practice areas. Maybe estate planning makes up 45% of your revenue, but you don't really want to invest heavily into the ads, but yet you're willing to invest a lot into your corporate litigation ads. So when you have differing needs as a whole, whether it's different office locations or different practice areas, you may want to diversify your marketing efforts by having Google Ads for one and SEO for the other in order to kind of cover all your bases and see the proper levels of growth that's diversified a little bit more than what you would do if you're heavily diversifying your PPC or heavily diversifying your SEO.
And we've definitely seen that with clients where, they say, like, especially like, on the personal injury side, we see like, well, we want to do ads for car accidents, but we don't want to do ads for all the other stuff. But the SEO, they'll do the SEO for the others, like the, more general personal injury. But then they want to focus, like they want to pay for car accident clicks. So yeah, that's definitely like something that we see often.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully, we've given you enough food for thought about which option is best for you, or hopefully convince you to do both because that will be the most fruitful. But either way, we thank you for listening. Drew and David, thank you for joining me. Until next time, thanks everybody from Paper Street. Bye bye.